This is the Perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah!
Did anything actually happen in 2022, or is that just all a dream?
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your host, Micah Shalansky, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis. What's going on, bud?
Micah, life in the fast lane, living the dream as always, though ironically, you are in Las Vegas as we record this, and I am in Seattle, so we're just kind of, we always want to shake up this virtual podcasting.
Very much so. Well, before we get too much further, I just want to say Merry Christmas. It is Christmas season, which is fantastic. I hope you guys had a wonderful time with your family. I know we celebrate Christmas well past the 25th of December as well. So I love this Christmas season, a great time to be intentional. And Jarvis, it's really a great time not only just to be intentional, but to be thinking about, making sure we're grateful and making sure we have a lot of gratitude about this past year. And it might have been some ups and downs. It might have been some challenging times at different points, but it's really important to find things we're grateful for and then kind of pivot that into a little bit of 2023 planning if you haven't already.
Yeah, and I know it can feel a bit cliche, right, during the Christmas season or the holiday season to talk about, things that you're grateful for, but it really is a critical exercise. The Dan Sullivan, strategic coach, talks about the gap and the gain, right? I think he did a book with Ben Hardy about that. And whereas entrepreneurs, we're wired, I think, to see what's the gap between where I am and where's the next level. We're always looking at that gap, and we forget to look back at the gain. And Mike, this is something that my wife Jackie had me start doing years ago, because I would get towards the end of the year and I would get, I don't want to call it depressed, but I'd get a little bit down. I'm like, man, this year is over. It's gone. I don't feel like I got anything done. And she really, are you serious? You didn't get anything done this year? She said, sit down and write a list of all the things that we did this year. And then I would write out this multi-page list of all the things that we had done. And then I would leave it up for quite some time.
Which is such a brilliant idea, right? And it's not just on the business side. It's definitely got to be on the personal side as well.
Yes.
What things have you done on the personal side? Like, we built a house this year. That's no minor feat. Sure, it's been being done since the dawn of time. But for us, it was a great adventure. And it's a lot of activities to go through. You went on several trips with your family, right? These are things that we really got to highlight inside of this as well, and making sure we're thinking about this in context of the next year.
Yeah, and I highly recommend for all of our advisors listening, and Mike, the podcast passed 1 million downloads this year. We're getting 60,000 downloads a month or something like this. But for advisors listening, don't feel like it's only the extraordinary, I can rival with Matt and Micah list. Now, and if you have those, that's awesome, right? Take the small things,
yes.
Right? What were the adventures you did with your kids? How consistently did you work out? It really can be the smallest thing. I upgraded my fee schedule. I improved my surge meetings. I got better email confirmations. It does not have to be this amazing, hey, I was in Europe for 6 months. That's cool too, but it can be everything. So don't leave anything out because it's too small.
One of the things, Jarvis, I think is really neat about this as well is this is something that you can talk about with your kids, with your family, that you can kind of spread on, right? That we get caught in the gap of the gain. One of the things I worry about being an entrepreneur, just with my kids, is how much am I pushing them towards the gap all of the time and not focus on these other things. So I love to take these things and bring them back to the family side and really be grateful and appreciate all the wonderful blessings that we've had for this year.
Micah, this is also something I do with my team. Anytime we're doing any kind of a team retreat, a team training, whatever the case may be, we always lead with what are all of the victories that we've had since we last met. Now, 5-star tip, I start a list ahead of time because in the moment when you say, all right, everybody, let's talk about all the great things we've done this quarter, and it's crickets, right? Nobody can think of anything. And it almost is depressing. I was like, I don't think we did a damn thing this quarter. And then I said, well, actually, no. So I always have 5 or 6 to get the ball rolling, right? Hey, we updated the confirmations on Calendly, whatever it is to get that ball rolling. But it's so essential to look back and say, all right, we've been making incredible progress because, Mike, as you pointed out, we're always pushing towards that gap, and we need to make sure we celebrate the gain.
I know on the Shalansky team, one of the things, big goals that we had this year was to have contact with over 1 million federal employees for planning their retirement. And we hit the goal. And that was really amazing to talk about that. You think 1 million people, right, reviewed and read the content, and it kind of helped them prepare for retirement, which is just absolutely amazing. That's going to cascade us into our next goal. And so sometimes when we're, especially on the visionary side, we're setting these big aspirational dreams, visions, and goals. It's really nice to be able to stop, pivot back, and tie it into things the team has actually done and really be grateful to celebrate that success.
Mike, I think that speaks also to the importance of tracking whatever it is you're aiming for lots of reasons. One, in this case, so you can celebrate that you've achieved it. But the other, and we ran into this recently, we've been working with a lot of advisors, it's really easy to start drinking your own Kool-Aid, to say, you know what I saw? Mike, I saw 35 prospects this year, right? Or whatever. Well, let's just write down their names really quick. Let's just go name by name. Oh, it was 12. Okay. But we tell ourselves these stories about the numbers. So this is about being grateful. It's about celebrating, but it's also make sure like, hey, am I telling myself the truth? Or am I sort of guessing like, oh yeah, sure, I ran it at 60% profit margin. Well, wait a second. I'm doing the math here. It looks more like a 25% profit margin. So it cuts both ways.
Jarvis, this is one of the reasons in our masterminds, as you know, we always require financial documents, right? Is saying, I want to see the actual documents. I want to see the printouts. I want to see the client information, all of that. Well, not detailed client information, right? But the stats. And the reason I want to see that is just for that reason, because I think it's like a fishing story, right? Which, come on, who hasn't been guilty of this, right? You land a 32-inch rainbow, which is just absolutely amazing. By the time you got back to the lodge, it was 32.5-inch. By the time you get home, it was 33 inches. Then, let's just round it to 35. Right? All of a sudden, that rainbow just keeps getting bigger and bigger in your mind. And it's really nice to have that picture that has the tape on it that says, it was a 32-inch rainbow. And it's the same thing with our books of business. We have a little bit of bravado whenever we're talking to other advisors about our practices. And it's really important. As fun as that can be in some contexts, and you can have this desire to inflate your numbers because you feel like everybody else is inflating theirs, man, you start drinking your own Kool-Aid and it's the wrong flavor, you're going to end up with quite a problem.
A place, Micah, that this came up in my practice, I think we talked about it in a prior episode, but we were doing kind of our fourth quarter planning several months ago. And the team was kind of there was sort of this consensus that, we had talked to every client and we had done all of the updates for every client. And then I said, you know what, it doesn't feel quite right. Let's pull the actual list. And there was a couple of clients that sort of slipped through the cracks, and that's why we pulled the list. But everybody was completely confident. There was no deception here. There was no lying. There was no malice.
Yep.
We just all in our eyes like, hey, we've talked to every client. Let's pull the list. And we look, sure enough, there's a handful of clients that just nobody had remembered to reach out to them during that period that we wanted it done. Cool, not a problem. We can fix this. Let's get on the phone. Let's call these clients, and we'll take care of it. But it's so easy to drink your own Kool-Aid.
And Jarvis, that really speaks to needing systems and processes and not relying on memories, et cetera.
Yep.
I was just working with a business client the other day, and one of the things that they were chatting about was saying they were really starting to grow, which is fantastic. And so they've gone from a couple-person team, and now they've almost tripled the size of their team. They have a lot of this growth, which is fantastic. And when I was sitting there chatting with them, she was like, well, this is how we're going to do it. And she was explaining to me the process. And I was like, hey, 3/4 of that process was all out of your memory and out of your mind. And while on a 2-person team, you might be able to pull that off. Now you have 6 people on your team. Now you're really growing with all this stuff, and plus all the other aspirational goals you have. That's not going to be a duplicatable system. We got to pull it out of your mind. We got to have a systematized process and detail out every single step. And I will say this is an area that most advisors could use a lot of help in, is taking that process out of their mind, taking it out of their staff's mind, and really document it. And I really think, Jarvis, and push back at me on this, this is a pain point of why advisors don't want to grow, is because, you know what, I've had the same assistant for 10 years. They know what they're doing. I'd have to train this other person. I wouldn't be able to see if they're doing their job right, all of these things. Well, that's because you don't have a system for it, right? This isn't a person thing. This is a process thing. You do not have a process for onboarding a new team member. You do not have a process for Roth conversions. You think you do, but you don't have a process. Your process is, hey, do a Roth conversion, Sally. And Sally looks at it and does a Roth conversion with no documentation. That's not a process, right? You're relying on individual people and memory skills, and eventually that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, it totally is. In fact, I'm working with Jeremy, one of our CEOs of one of our companies, Micah, that you and I work with, and he was saying the same thing. He says, Jarvis, hey, when this happens in your office, where is it documented? What's the process that you follow? And I had to sit back. I said, we have a process. He says, cool, no problem. It's back to drinking your Kool-Aid. Would you just show me the document? Because other advisors are asking for it. And I said, it's in the system somewhere. To his credit, he pushes again. He says, well, hey, just show it to me, right? I'm sure we could ask Colleen. She could show us. And I'm like, okay, good. Again, back to drinking Kool-Aid. All right, that's one we need to actually document. Yes, it works seamlessly and it's in someone's mind, but that's not a process.
And that's actually one of the things I've really enjoyed about coaching other advisors and really setting up, Invictus and Backstage Pass and Perfect RIA, is it's really focused me to think that to really check all the things I thought were processes and really make them processes. Because, we'll get done with the pod. I'm like, well, of course we have a process for this. Why wouldn't we have one? And I go back to the team. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, oh, great news. We're going to create a process today. And we're going to start and document this and getting these things in place. Because again, this isn't a thou shall not from the mound saying, well, everything you should do. I'm equally as guilty of this as the next person. And it's something I want to share and I want to talk about to make sure that, hey, let's make some improvements in 2023. Let's make sure this is a very intentional year. Pick a theme for this year. One of the themes that I have for this next year is leadership. I need to become the leader next year that I need to be in 10 years. And yeah, so, this is really kind of baking my noodles is saying, well, okay, who do I need to be in 10 years? That's a great question. And how do I develop those skills today so I'm that leader next year? Because the better I am at a leader, the more I'm going to help my team grow.
Yeah, that's a great one. So for you specifically in 2023, right, how do I become the leader in 2023 that I need to be 10 years from now, right? Kind of a 10-year goal in 1 year sounds like about our speed. But I think for all of our listeners, right, what specifically are you going to do? So let's fast forward. Let's say we're recording this on December 12th. Obviously, it airs a little bit later. You're December 12th, 2023. How will you know this year's a success? Not just sort of like in an anecdotal way, like, oh, it felt like a good year. But specifically, how will we measure, Micah, to your example, the length of that rainbow trout? How will we measure 2023 and say, hey, this was in fact my best year ever?
That really comes to building out your business plans. I know we talked to this in multiple other podcasts. We launched a pilot program this last year, which went really, really well, which is fantastic. So it's something we're going to think about sending out on a larger scale, which is business planning for advisors. There's one or two other business planning programs that I've seen for advisors, and that's about it. But we have a TPR flavor on it of saying, how do we really make a commitment in what your practice is the next 3, 5, 10 years? And 10 years is a little bit of a challenge for me, right? It's pretty far out there. 3 and 5 years, I can start to see, I can start to morph, I can start to move down that path. But Jarvis, to your point, these has to be measurable things. Like if I just said I wanted to be a better leader and I left it at that, what the heck does that mean? Right? I mean, do I feel like a better leader? Does my team feel like I'm a better leader? Like, how do I measure these things? And I need to make this a game that I can win. So I need to make these things that I can control and I can accomplish this next 12 months that are going to move the needle.
Yeah, and as we talk to advisors, and Micah, you and I have now had the opportunity to talk with, I guess I would probably call it thousands of advisors, though to our point, I probably need to go back and count and be like, how many advisors is it actually? What I find is the biggest differentiator is how intentional you are with your planning, with your life, with your time, right? If you're saying, hey, 2023 is going to be a great year, that's not intentional. Odds are 23 is going to be the same as 22 and 21. But if you're being very intentional and you're saying, hey, this year I'm going to get this personal development. I'm going to join Invictus. I'm going to attend these events. I'm going to get this extreme accountability. I'm going to talk to this number of advisors. That's what's going to make the difference. Too often, Mike, I talk to advisors. I talked to one recently who he and I had started with Tom Gow the same year. And so it was kind of this like blast from the past, like, oh, we had started. And Mike, my practice was at 5X the level of his, even though he had a 20-year head start on me in the industry. What was the difference? Well, he was kind of just waiting to implement things. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do those things. And I just, listen, I'm going to do them all at once. Like, here's the 10 things I'm going to do. I'm going to get them knocked out. So as you're looking at 23, it's fun to get excited and fired up, but it needs to be very, very specific. Here's what I'm going to intentionally do this year.
And so we're not going to get into setting New Year's resolutions because nobody ever keeps those. And we're going to talk about how willpower is not enough. So you really need some extreme accountability. But this really comes down to what's that morning success ritual? What's that thing you're going to do every single morning to make sure you're in your A game? Is it getting up and working out? Is it having time to read? Is it reviewing your business plan, right? What do you have to do in the morning to get your mind that A game status so you can really crush it? You can really be a giant success for your family and for your team. And you got to start building that and you got to implement it. And you probably, if you've never done this, you got to put some extreme accountability around it. You got to find an accountability partner that's going to hold you to this and make sure you get it done.
Yeah, now quick plug for Extreme Accountability. Our next Invictus Mastermind will be May 2nd and 3rd in Las Vegas. That's open for all of our Invictus members. And Mike, we cover a lot of great things in those, but really when it comes down to it, it's the extreme accountability that transforms people's life. We just got back from one, really makes a big difference. But again, as you're looking at 2023, the other thing I would say is what rules are you going to put in place for your life? For example, a rule I have, I don't work on Fridays. That eliminates that decision from my life. Too often we say like, oh, I'll work out at some point this week. I'll do personal development at some point this week. And the week goes by and the month goes by and the year goes by and your life goes by and you're still saying someday. So we want to eliminate as many decisions as we can from our lives. That way, that's one less thing I need to worry about.
And this can come up in little things as well. I know we were at one retreat and someone says, "Hey, Mikey, can we do a meeting at 5 a.m. Alaska time?" And everybody kind of looks at that person like, "Are you crazy?" No, Micah's not getting up at 4 and doing a meeting at 5 a.m. That's not exactly in a peak zone. So these things are going to come up. So you got to put rules in place around them. Jarvis, I love this. No meetings on Friday. Can we meet on Friday? See rule, we don't meet on Friday, right? I don't work on Friday. So these are really important things to put in place and to make sure you hold fast to them, because as soon as you put this rule in place, someone is going to test you on it. And it'll be a convincing reason as to why you should make an exception to that rule. And the minute you make one exception to that rule, you're going to make 50 exceptions to that rule, and it's no longer a rule.
Yeah, so other examples of this, Micah, that come to mind would be your minimum revenue for a new client. And again, that's the one that the universe is going to test you. If you say, hey, all right, my minimum revenue per client is $10,000, I promise you the very next prospect you see will be at like $9,900. And just to test your fortitude, say, hey, am I going to stick? Am I going to tell them, hey, listen, my minimum fee is $10,000 a year? Or am I going to fudge on that because it's close? What if it's $9,000? What if it's $8,000? What if it's $6,000? What if it's $2,000? What if it's free? Like once you start going down that path and you're putting all this brain power into it, well, 9,900, that's pretty close. They'll grow into it.
Just
Maybe
round.
They'll find, yeah. But you've got to have these lines. And I'm telling you as listeners, because I remember this, I would say, well, that's not that big of a deal. I promise you it's the entire world. It's the entire world. Once you compromise on your standards, even things that seem inconsequential, like your fee minimum, the whole thing falls apart.
And we saw this happen the other day, coaching with an advisor, and he was out of the East Coast, and he was putting up his numbers, and I was like, hey, bud, your math isn't wrong. He was adamant that he had XYZ fee schedule. And I'm like, you do not have that fee schedule. And he was like, no, I'm adamant. This is the minimum fee that I charge. Well, he put his assets up there. He says, this is my average fee. I know it because it's the minimum. All my clients are paying this, et cetera. And I looked at his thing. He's like, $80 million in assets or whatever it was. And he said, I guarantee all of my clients pay at least 1%. I said, well, you should have $800,000 in revenue. And he has 550,000, which is fantastic. But that means you are not charging 1%. That's what that math really quickly means. But he had drunk his own Kool-Aid for so long in this particular circumstances that he wasn't looking into these numbers because he had made an exception. He had told himself that says, I only charge 1%. And then something came up that says, oh, I need to charge this one less than 1%. Oh, I need to waive this fee. Oh, I don't need to charge on this, et cetera. And then all of a sudden you got a 30% deviation in his book, with 20+% deviation in his book, right, of where he thought he was versus the reality. And that happens just one little decision at a time. So Jarvis, a takeaway from that, laminate your fee schedule, right? If you have a practice change, you're going to start implementing financial planning fees. All clients will now pay a financial planning fee, and you're going to do a financial plan. Fantastic. Have that service offering printed and laminated and in your conference room. Great news, Mr. and Mrs. Client. This is how we operate. This is the process we have for success. This is what we're going to do, etc. And now that it's laminated, it cannot be changed because now it makes it permanent in everybody's minds. And so now it can help you hold to that.
Yeah. Boy, Micah, that reminds me of another advisor we talked to who needed to levelize his fees because he had all these exceptions everywhere. Now, by the way, if you were thinking, hey, that was me, it's probably not. Mike and I talked to a lot of advisors. Though, again, if you're thinking it's you probably need to take care of this.
Could be you.
But this advisor said, hey, listen, I can't levelize my fees until. And so we get a lot of this, like, hey, I can't take Fridays off until. I can't do surge meetings until. I can't raise my fees until. And what happens, Mike, is we see those advisors year after year after year, and they're still waiting for the until. And it changes and it evolves. But really, and it's kind of this eat the frog. Like, hey, listen, I'm not going to call my centers of influence until. It's only going to work if it's the very first thing you do. So as you look at 2023, whatever that thing is you're putting off, whatever that thing is you're telling yourself, hey, listen, I'll do that when, do it now. Do it in January. Knock that thing out.
So some great ways to look at this, right, is how are you going to make 2023 your best year ever? Personally, professionally, financially, physically, etc. What are you going to do that's inside of your control to make it the best year ever? Now, be careful of this, right? We don't want New Year's resolutions. I don't want this saying that you're going from never working out to working out 5 times a day, right? Or even every single day. That's just not going to happen. So how do you set this up for success? And then what's the one area you want the most commitment on? The one area that you're like, I don't know if I'm really going to do this or not. So an easy example, we were talking to this lady the other day, and she says, hey, this next year, I'm going to start going to the gym, 4 days a week. I was like, well, great. What's going to make you do that? She's like, well, I pay for a gym membership, and because I pay for it, I can't waste my money, and so it'll force me to do it. I said, well, that's excellent. How long have you had a gym membership? She says, a year. I said, how many times did you go to the gym this last year? She's like, I didn't. Okay, well, then you paying for a gym membership is not the catalyst to make you go work out. That is not extreme accountability enough. So we got to put something inside of there that's really uncomfortable. The whole purpose of extreme accountability is to make the not doing it more uncomfortable than the doing it, so we can do things so much easier and we can get these things done.
Yeah, so an example of extreme accountability there, Micah, would obviously not be the gym membership. In fact, as soon as you gave that example, I thought you do realize that's like how the entire gym model works, is people paying and not going. Set that aside. So an example of extreme accountability would be like, hey, listen, every week that you don't go to the gym 5 times, for each day that you miss, it's $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000 to your least favorite charity or least favorite political candidate. So if you get to Saturday and you say, crap, I only went to the gym 3 times, great, that's $30,000 to fill in the blank person you hate the most. That's a number where you're going to start doing it. $30 a month or even $300 a month, that's a sunk cost that's not going to work.
Yeah, clearly not, because it hasn't been working, right? So we have to do these things. We have to make it different. Yeah. And then financially as well, one of the things that I'm really going to start calling out more advisors on across the board, so that means even less are going to talk to me now, is where are you financially? Mm-hmm. And are you doing the same things for your clients that you should be doing for yourself? If you're recommending it to your client, then by God, you should be doing this yourself. And if I have a conversation with you and you are recommending Roth conversions to a client, yet you have all of your money in tax deferred and you're not doing Roth conversions, we're going to have a very awkward conversation for you, because why aren't you following through with this, right? I'm sick and tired of seeing financial advisors spend 20 plus years in their career, not be financially independent, and they're waiting on a big sell that you're never going to get from your financial planning firm. Let's do some quick math. Let's say you get 5x on the sell of your practice, which would be fantastic.
That would be pretty amazing, but go ahead.
Yeah, let's just say that, right? What is that, 5 years? Let's say at 50% profitability, at best, at 7.5 years, maybe 10 years of money. Well, if you're not financially independent, what the heck are you going to do, right? Selling your practice alone is not enough to sail off into retirement unless you're 85 years old. So where are you in the discipline? And I got to say, working with advisors and making sure they get on track, this makes their confidence working with individual clients through the roof. They are so excited and committed to the financial planning process because they're doing it themselves and because they hold to more financial discipline lines. This is something we really have to do.
Yeah, so you've got to have, whether it's the finances, which I love this focus that we're having, or any of it, you've got to have the measurements, right? What's 2023? How much money are you going to defer into your retirement accounts or just save in general, right? Whatever. What is this is something I do every year, Micah, is I update my net worth statement just for me personally. Which I started doing when I had an SBA loan, and I had to do it. I just got in that habit, right? And really look like, all right, is that number really moving? Or am I, in fact, as you pointed out, am I just burning through all my cash flow and I'm drinking the Kool-Aid if someday I'll have this magical exit? That's just not going to work out. So again, when it comes to being intentional, you really can't go too far, and you've got to look at those areas. Mike, to your point, your finances, your family, your practice, your personal health, all of these things. And then, Mike, I think you need to put them in order too, right? And then how we know your order is which ones you put on the calendar first. And this is something I'm guilty of. Whatever one goes on your calendar first, that's the one that's most important to you.
Boy, I liked you until you said that. I don't like you anymore.
Well, I got to pay to keep my family going, right? So that has to, me working is therefore my family being first, right?
Yeah, that is exactly the logic that we use, right? Yeah, no, these are really, really important things. Like, yeah, how are you taking action in this? How are you prioritizing this? What are you personally doing is really, really important. I would say the next step, Jarvis, just to pivot off the calendar thing for a quick second, is when you do that net worth statement, you need to bring it to a mastermind and have somebody poke holes in it. Yes. Now, here's the important part about a mastermind, right? And I had a conversation with our mastermind recently as well, just in concept, no one in particular, of saying, hey, it is not nice and it is not compassionate to accept someone else's BS numbers and not to say anything because you're worried about offending them. Yep. That is not compassion, right? You're allowing them to dilute themselves. You're allowing them to continue to lie to themselves and go down the wrong path. Compassion is saying, Jarvis, you put this number here. How did you get to this number? Why are you saying your practice is worth 12x when on average they sell for 3x? Why are you so special, right? And saying, no, this is a bullcrap number. And no, this wasn't Jarvis, by the way, right? But no, this is a BS number, and kind of knocking these things back down. while I don't like being in the hot seat, it is so valuable, and I really love it when the other mastermind members kind of start picking things apart. Why do you have it set up this way? How do you have it set up? And I got to say, I get defensive, right? I don't like my stuff being picked apart, but it really forces me to look at these details and things. And that's where extreme accountability really came from, was really diving into somebody else's practice and saying, the stuff you're saying you want to do is not the stuff you need to do. It's this thing over here you're lying to yourself about. And we're going to go push on this because you squirm, you move, you get out of this area, and that's the place that we need to be. So when you get these finances together, get a mastermind group together, a couple of guys, share this and say, hey, poke, prod, how can I improve? How can I be better?
Now, of course, if you can't find a mastermind, because it is all, I got to be honest, it's a lot of work to put together. That's part of the reason we created the Invictus program. And so you can talk to Tracy at the Perfect RIA. She can get you connected there. But on that note, Micah, is your personal development plan for 2023. We were recently speaking with an advisor, and we said, hey, listen, you need to dramatically increase your personal development budget. You need to be taking at least 10% of your income and reinvesting that in personal development. He said, I don't know where I would spend that much money. And I said, well, that's easy. We can show you where to spend the money. But when I look, again, at advisors that are crushing it, when I look at the bookshelves, when I look at the conferences they're attending, this is not to say that conferences are all across the board valuable. Most are of no value. But when I look at what they're doing and what they're investing, it's night and day difference. A good friend of ours, Micah, that runs a phenomenal practice. That guy probably does 10x the personal development of anyone I've ever met. And his practice reflects that. And so, again, if you're looking and say, hey, why is my practice stagnated? I'd be willing to bet it's because your personal development has also stagnated.
Of course, the best PD you could ever spend would be signing up for Invictus, right? Hands down. Not biased in that recommendation at all, by the way. Yeah.
I love it. Well, this podcast and really everything we do, Micah, is about taking action, because the things that you know, and this is where people get mixed up on personal development, by the way. They say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get another designation behind my name. That's not personal development. That's playing office. So we have to be very careful here. So let's talk about action items for this episode and really for all of 2023. I would say first action item, mark your calendar for May 2nd and 3rd, which is our Invictus Mastermind. Mark it for September 28th and 29th, which is the Retirement Tax Services Tax Summit. And mark it for September 29th and 30th, which is the Perfect RIA Conference. Those things alone will catapult your practice. But of course, it's not enough, but start there.
You absolutely have to start. I'm going to say create a PD budget is the second thing that you really need to do. You got to create a personal professional development. Now, this can be broad, right? Your Invictus membership would be included. Backstage Pass would be included. RTS would be included as ways of personal development, right? Is it something that I'm going to go to, I'm going to learn and be better personally or professionally, right? When I hire a coach, then I use it. One of the things I love about creating that PD budget, when I first did it, it was a use or lose budget. I had to spend that money every single year, or I had to give it away. I couldn't use it, etc. Now, I got a little bit more flex with it now because I burned the budget, right? I don't have that issue anymore. I'm able to spend that money every single year. So these are things you really got to look at.
I love it. I love it. Well, Micah, last action item on my list is, of course, to do that list that we talked about of all your successes for 2022. But take the time, if you really want to next level it, take the time to do this with each member of your team, collectively and individually, and take this time to do it with people that are important to you in your life, right? With your spouse, with your kids, and really everyone in your life that you go through and say, hey, boy, what were your biggest accomplishments in 2022, no matter how small, right? Just what are things we could celebrate? What are successes that we've had so that we get our focus on the gain? Obviously, we're going to always keep our mind on the gap because we're always going next level, but we want to keep our mind on the gain and say, wow, we're making a ton of progress here.
Awesome. Jarvis, as always, I just want to say thank you for your help, your support this past year. We've helped over 1 million advisors through the podcast. We have helped hundreds of advisors directly, thousands of advisors indirectly. We are transforming the industry in so many different ways, and we're not done yet. We have some massive plans for this next year. We are really close to launching something that is going to help transform the industry and helping advisors be able to deliver more value to their clients. So we are super excited about announcing that this next year. I just wanted to say personally, Jarvis, I'm very grateful for our friendship and the work that we're doing here. So thank you very much. And guys, until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.